Good afternoon, team. Welcome to the QA Pilot Quality Circle, titled The Beez, Neez. Our theme, Ring My Bell. Safety commitment is to ensure the safety of all visitors while in the audit lab. When we started, we wanted to do a pre-assessment to gauge our team members' skill. Based on the pre-assessment, we determined that although we have a high skill level, there's still some room for improvement. We also wanted to do the pre-circle assessment to gauge our technical capabilities and circle dynamics. Looking at it, currently we're at a zone C. During this quality circle, we wanted to create a development plan so that during each step, we gave every team member an opportunity to learn something new, such as creating graphs, working with teams, and just working with the fishbone from step 4, root cause analysis. Now I want to introduce the team. So our circle leader is Daniel, the host. Our scribe is Mike Canales. Note taker, Mark Garcia. Our timekeeper was Veronica Magallanes. The gatekeeper was myself, Abdan Elias, and our circle members were Colin Fikes and Michael Medina. So when we began this theme selection, we came up with 4 proposed themes. The one we decided to go with was the visitors ringing the doorbell to come into audit, which interrupts work, break, and lunch. Looking at will it make it easier? Yes, it'll make it much easier. Vested interest, how many team members are impacted? More than 50%. Can we solve it by ourselves? We'll need a little bit of help. Can we complete it in time? Yes, we can. What if the problem's not solved? It'll become worse gradually. And what will the benefit be to the team? So our main focus was team member morale, but as we looked into it, we began to realize that it also affected productivity and quality. So looking here, you can see it created a loss of focus in our job. So that loss of focus is an example. We had team members ring the doorbell, the team member had to stop their work, and then they'd have difficulty trying to remember exactly where they left off. Another item is double work. There were a couple of instances where we had team members get assigned multiple evaluations twice because of these interruptions. And then we missed critical meetings. So we had confidential meetings about new model launch that we weren't able to attend because we had to assist the members coming into the building. And then added responsibility was another example. That example, team member would ring the doorbell, then they would ask for some additional assistance, such as fueling their vehicle or perhaps locating a vehicle. That takes us into step 1. If you look at the diagram on the right, you can see the area layout for the group leader and pilot area. The reason that the door is there is because it's in close vicinity to the pilot area. Jumping into the background, so in December 2020, QA Pilot began preparations for major model launch for both Tundra and Sequoia. Because of the confidentiality requirements, all doors to the audit hub were locked and visitors were only able to gain access through this one door. This was a countermeasure from 989 Tacoma, where we had difficulty controlling the confidentiality of the vehicle. So most visitors didn't have the badge access, so they had to ring the doorbell for pilots to open the door, which caused those interruptions during work, lunch, and during their breaks. Our ultimate goal is to provide customers with the highest quality trucks at the lowest cost in the shortest lead time by eliminating interruptions to pilot during operations. Our ideal situation is to have 0 interruptions during pilot operations. Our current situation, 865 over the last 3 months. So our gap being 865 interruptions for a total of 433 minutes. Now think if we took that same 865 interruptions and did that to a production team member. Unacceptable 100% of the time. Now I'll go ahead and hand it over to Mark Garcia for step 2.
Thank you, Adam. So breaking down the problem, we took our gap of 865 evaluations and started to break that down. We noticed that 187 were TMM-TX employees without access. 678, that larger number, was non-TMM-TX employees. We started breaking down to 678. We found that 111 were part suppliers, 258 were contractors, 17 were other, and 292 were Toyota corporate employees. Breaking down that larger 292, we found that 28 were from other NAMCs, 122 were from TTC, and 142 were from TM&A. we determined that that was our prioritized problem. Looking at the visitor process to coming onto the plant, first, we post the trial on BBS. Next, the visitors request time on the schedule. They then send their badge request to Texas PPM. PPM will then forward that request to security. Visitors will then travel to Texas, come to the audit building, scan their badge, enter the building, and then perform their evaluation. We determined that the point of occurrence is when the visitors scan their badge and cannot access the audit building. So putting those two together, our prioritized problem and point of occurrence is 142 TMNA visitors interrupted QA pilot because their badges would not scan at audit building. Step 3, target setting. So we want to eliminate 142 of the TMNA visitor interruptions. That would be 100% reduction of that issue. And the overall impact to the gap would be a 16% reduction from 865 to 723. And that 723 would continue to reduce through further QCC activity. Step 4, root cause analysis. So we took our prioritized problem at point of occurrence, and we looked at man, method, machine, environment, and material for potential contributors to the issue. Looking at machine and environment, there was no impact. When we looked at material, we identified one potential area of interest, and that is the access form does not have audit building specifically on that form. However, there is a blank spot that you can write in whatever area you need access to. We looked at man, and we found out that several of the visitors did not have an escort with badge access to audit, which was requested prior to trials, but nonetheless, that wasn't feasible all the time. And we also identified that when they submitted the request, some of them were not aware they had to ask for different areas of access. We finally looked at method, and we were able to identify that although the visitor handbook was sent out on time, there was no instructions to ask for audit access specifically. And we identified that to be our root cause. We confirmed the root cause by asking the why questions. So TMNA visitors' badges won't scan to grant access in audit building. Why? Their badges were not activated. Why? They did not submit requests. Why? They didn't know they needed to. Why? There was no instruction in the PPM visitor handbook instructing them to do that. We were able to double confirm this root cause because we asked the visitors when they arrived why they did not ask for audit building access, and they stated they did not know they needed to. So next I'll turn it over for developing countermeasures to Veronica.
Thanks, Mark. Good afternoon. Going over step 5 for develop countermeasures. So we had option 1, camera with buzzer system to let people in. We would be able to quickly see who wanted access, but we would still have to talk to them and walk over to the buzzer, and it would be just the same amount of time. For option 2, hire a security guard for authorized entrance to audit lab like they have at TTC. With that, that would give us 100% control of who's coming in, but at the same time, security would probably have to come in and ask us if they were allowed to come in. For option 3, restrict the access to all doors except the northeast door, leaving the doors unlocked during production hours. With that, while this would reduce the number of times or interruptions to pilot, it would compromise the confidentiality to our project. Option 4, to have central security at specific spot to form for audit. This would require getting an outside group to change their form. Option 5 was to have instructions in the PPM visitor package that those that need access to audit lab must specifically request it. So the cost for this would be low, our effectiveness would be high, level of difficulty would be low. Do it by ourselves, we would need some help, but we could do it, give it a medium, giving us a total point of 18. And if all visitors know that they need to request audit badge access. With an example, it would reduce the number of times we have to open the door. Moving on to step 6, seeing the countermeasure through. Number 1, we created instructions for how to request audit building access by Daniel on December the 1st, 2021. Number 2, we had a mini trial of the proposed countermeasure. This involved Jason H., Todd White, Saeed A., and Kyle D's groups and Daniel DeHost. This was done on December the 7th, 2021. Number 3, review the results of the mini trial. This is with Daniel DeHost on 12/13/2021. Number 4 was request to PPM group to add instructions to the RE manual that if visitors need access to the audit building, they must specifically request it and provide example to put in manual. This was Abraham Elias and Nikki Moran on December the 15th, 2021. Number 5, we yoke attendance to the 660B MPTA RE manual by Nikki Moran on March 24th, 2022. Going to step 7, monitor results. I'll hand it off to Mike Canales.
Step 7, monitoring results. During our smaller trial of 790, we had a study that we did. 15 members came down. We had 0 interruptions to our pilot activities. Then we also had from that, our countermeasure, we computed that from the previous trial that we found that eliminating the TMNA interruptions, that for 142, it dropped it down to 723, which also we found that with the proposed countermeasure that it also affected TTC, which dropped it down to 601. And then standardized success. We worked with PPM to standardize the process by adding a column to the RE handbook. And then next, we yoke attend the process to 660, which also was a big improvement. And then for our QA master plan for additional projects that come up, we added it to our master plan. And I'm going to hand it off to Brent Elias.
All right, team, when we did our post-evaluation, we found out that we improved in a lot of areas. We moved from a zone C to a zone B. Now I'm going to hand it over for some team member reflections.
So I wasn't very versatile with teams when we began the QC Circle. Because of the pandemic, most of our meetings had to be on Teams. And as such, I was forced to learn how to create files and channels on Teams. And that's translated, and it was very important when I was assigned 660 project lead, because that was heavily Teams-based. I'll turn it over to Mike.
My name is Mike Canales. I enhanced my skills on developing countermeasures. I learned that can be a simple option, but not every problem is as complex with the QCC countermeasure selection matrix. Also improved on monitoring results, although we completed with the bulk of trials. Now, the information that we had gathered, we were able, on a smaller trial, we were able to confirm our countermeasures. I'm going to pass it on to Veronica.
So my reflection, I am not don't have the knowledge with Excel. So team member helped me become better at making graphs. That was my reflection. I did have a class on Excel maybe 3 years ago and didn't retain some of it. So Daniel helped me refresh me with the graphs. That's it for our presentation. Does anyone have any questions?